Hi, it's Lou from Christian Faith and Fiction. Today I'm going to share with you some Christian fiction book reviews as well as some other books that I've been reading recently. I've got some Christian fiction books to share with you. I have some reviews that I've been filming as I've been going along over the last couple of months. Some other books that I've been reading as well. I'll just give you the ratings for those ones. I rate my books based on story rating and on faith content as well. So if you'd like to know how I rate my books, I've made a video about that and I'll leave that down in the description. There are several books that I've got to share with you today, so let's see how I got on. So this week I finished one book. I ended up DNFing The Problem of Pain by C.S. Lewis. This is a theological book about pain and the philosophy of pain in some ways. I found it a little bit too abstract for me in the style, and I really need some kind of metaphors or some anecdotes or something to ground it for my brain to sort of latch on to understand properly, and I was just finding it hard work, so I decided to DNF that one at the second chapter. I may dip into it in the future again just to see what it says, but I didn't feel like pushing through with that one at the moment. And then I finished, finally joined the party and finished If I Run by Terri Blackstock, which is a mystery and suspense novel, a Christian one. I gave it 10 out of 10 for story content and a 3 out of 3 for rating for faith content. It does have some significant faith conversations that take place. Ironically, I probably got more from this about suffering and how, you know, God, the questions around God allowing people to suffer than I did out of the other book. But this was really fantastic. I loved it. I loved the suspense elements to it. I loved the mystery elements. I love the characters. I thought it was really interestingly done. I really want to read the other books, but I'm putting it off for a little bit just so that I space it out a bit. It follows Casey, who finds her best friend has been murdered, and she thinks she's going to be set up to be the murder suspect, and so she doesn't trust the police, so she goes on the run. And then it also follows Dylan, who has been hired by the murder victim's family to find Casey and bring her back to justice, and he has to decide what he thinks about the whole thing and whether he believes the police or whether he believes her or what he believes about things. It was a really fascinating book. There are other mysteries going on as well in here, and absolutely loved it. Definitely thought like it was worth reading, and I will definitely be continuing with this series. I finished reading Beyond the Tithes by Liz Johnson. This is the first book in her current series that she's going through, and it's set in Prince Edward Island. This follows Meg, who is a teacher who is come home to look after her mum and be there, support her dad, as her mum has health has not been good. And she finds out that he is trying to sell his lobster fishing business to a guy called Oliver, who she still has a grudge against because he did something during years ago, and she can't forgive him for it. And she's absolutely livid that her dad is thinking of selling his business to him. And so she decides that she is going to try and get her dad to give the business to her, even though she gets really seasick and she doesn't particularly like fishing. She just can't stand the idea of Oliver getting the business. And so they end up going in a kind of head-to-head competition over the season to win her dad's favour to get this business. Obviously this is a contemporary romance. It is a Christian romance. There is a decent amount of Christian content in here. They talk about God frequently. They go to church. God is brought into the story quite a lot, and I really did appreciate that. The only downsides for me, I think, is that the physical kind of part of the romance was a little bit more descriptive than I would like. It's clean, there's no sex scenes, there's nothing that I would say is improper in that sense, but what there is goes into it kind of goes, well, it spends a bit of time talking about it, and I just felt myself being like, have you ever watched the film The Princess Bride, where at the beginning the boy is sort of talking to his dad and going, is this going to be a kissing book? Like, they're kissing again. So yeah, I was a bit like that in there. I just, yeah. Also, there was some things that decisions that they take, I felt like maybe not the wisest decision to do as a Christian. Can't really go into much detail because it would go in too much of the story, but yeah, I wasn't necessarily happy about that, the wisdom of that decision. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I really did appreciate that it had proper Christian content. I think it's been described as a kind of gentle romance, and I would say, yeah, that is. I loved the family dynamic of Meg's family. I think that was probably my favourite, and her dad's probably one of my favourite characters in this story. So I'm going to give it 4 stars on Goodreads. I will give it 8 out of 10 for story content, and I think about 2.5 out of 3 rating for Christian content. It's not the main part of the story, it's not the main kind of point of the story, but it is very prominent in the story. This week I finished 3 books. I finished The Mountain of Adventure by Enid Blyton. This is probably my least favourite book in this series. I felt like it was a little bit far-fetched as a story, and I gave it a story rating of 6.5 out of 10 and faith rating of 0. And then I finished If I'm Found by Terri Blackstock, which is the second book in this series. I really, really enjoyed it. Again, I'm loving the overall story, which continues throughout the 3 books following Casey and Dylan. And Casey feels like she's going to be accused of her best friend's murder because she stumbles across his murder scene, and she feels like they're going to, the police are going to believe it was her, so she goes on the run, and then Dylan is hired to chase her down. So they're continuing that story, but there's also like separate subplot mysteries that are going on within each book, and that wrap up within the book. So I've enjoyed that one, not quite as much as the first one, but I did still enjoy it, and I gave it 9 out of 10 on the story content and 3 out of 3 for a faith rating. It has some really great Christian faith moments in this book, and I really enjoyed that, and it has a good impact on the character development, particularly of Casey. So yeah, really worth reading for me, and I've enjoyed it a lot so far. Hoping to pick up the next book next month maybe, or maybe I'll jump in quicker and get hold of carry on earlier than that. And then the third book that I finished was The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupery. Terrible French accent. This is like I think it's from 1943, something like that. It's a kind of classic children's, I think it's a children's, but I'm not sure, because as I was reading it, it seems more like a kind of parable or a fable for adults. There's definitely a message for adults in there, and it reads a bit like a fable. I would say it's not aimed at children to read to themselves, because there's some really long words in there, words that I just wouldn't use either. Maybe that's because it's an older book. Possibly I guess it's designed to be read to children. Yeah, I can see that if it was like one you read as a child, it might be one of your favourites for nostalgic reasons, but having never read it before, I had to say it was kind of a bit boring for me and a little bit weird. Yeah, it grew on me a bit as it went on. In the end, I gave it a 6 out of 10 and a faith rating of 0. But it's a lovely cover. These editions are really cute. So I just finished reading The Wedding Dress by Rachel Hauck. This is a dual time period romance, Christian romance novel, and it follows Charlotte, who owns a bridal boutique, and she ends up getting hold of an old trunk which is like welded shut, and she finds a wedding dress. That's not really a spoiler as it's the title of the book, and it has like a history to it. It's been worn by other brides before her, and she's trying to find out whose it was and how it came to her. There's kind of a mystery around the dress and the person who kind of sold her the dress, and so there's two sort of main romances that are going on. So in the present day there's Charlotte, and she's engaged but she's having all sorts of issues with sorting out her wedding. And then in the historical time period there's Emily, who is supposed to be getting engaged to one guy, and then her old flame turns up. And this is all about how the gown came into being and Charlotte's search for who owned it in the past. I had kind of mixed reactions to the story. There are parts of it I absolutely loved, and the parts I loved I really loved. And then the odd things in there that's frustrating to me. So two of the main characters I really loved and admired, and then two of them I found frustrating, and I'm not going to tell you which ones was which or why, because those would spoil the story. I really loved the Christian elements to this book. I felt they were good, they were strong in here, and yeah, it kind of plays a part through all of the characters' lives. So I'll give it a mark of 3 out of 3 for Christian faith rating. I gave it 8.5 out of 10 for the story rating, and I think there are two or three more in this series, so I hope we'll continue on some point in the future. But I'm glad to have read it because I know it was a popular book. It came out a little while ago, I think 2012, so it's been out a little while, and I was glad to pick it up finally. So I finished reading a couple of books. I finished The Ship of Adventure by Enid Blyton, which is in the adventure series. This is one of my more favourite ones. I gave it a story rating of 9 out of 10 and faith rating of 0. It's clean but there's no content. And then I carried on and reread Secrets in the Mist by Morgan Elbassy. This is in preparation for the sequel, Blood Secrets I think it's called, that's coming out in August. And I really enjoyed this one again. I gave it the same rating as last time, 9.5 out of 10. I gave it a faith rating of 2 out of 3. It does have some faith content in it. It's not the main part of the story, but it does have some, and I enjoyed that. I hope that it might get more faith content in the second book. I don't know, but I'm happy to see it there. This is following Cass, who is living in a world where there has been a kind of deadly mist that's been launched into the world, and she has living on the slums and the edge of society, and every now and then there's a purge to get rid of population in the slums because there's too many people, and so she ends up joining a diving ship it's like an airship. This is a steampunk book, and they go diving with masks down into the mist to retrieve objects for people. If you breathe in the mist, you turn into like a zombie. So it's quite a dangerous job, but she finds herself on that ship and finds herself on a quest to find an object for a guy who she meets, and that's how it goes. I'm really interested to see how the second book goes. I'm not sure if it's a concluding book or the second book in the series, but I'm interested to see how it goes. I think I probably almost enjoyed this one second time round, just because I was more familiar with the steampunk genre and this particular world and setting, and so I was able to imagine it more and sink into the story more the second time round. So those are the books that I've been reading recently. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of them and what you thought of them, and also let me know if you've read a great book recently that you can recommend. I hope you have a really great reading week, and until next time, God bless. Bye!